Good morning to you. This is Angela with Parco's Permaculture. I'm out in my garden. We're sitting here in my rain garden, which is just buzzing with bees this morning. And I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind, which is that a sentiment I keep seeing about how humanity is disconnected from nature. And what do we see our role as gardeners, as inhabitants of the planet, as being? What do we think the job of people is in terms of ecological job or in terms of how we relate to nature and the garden? So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today because it's just been something I see repeatedly brought up, and I think it's an important thing to discuss in the context of permaculture. So today I wanted to talk about that concept a little bit. When we're out in our garden, we are not separate from nature. In fact, we are never separate from nature. We are living things and we are part of the landscape, whether we like it or not. And there's a lot of, there's a sentiment I see repeated, which is that humans are disconnected from nature, that we are separate somehow from nature, and that we have to reconnect with it. And that isn't true. We are unable or unwilling or conditioned to not see the ways in which we are connected to nature, but that doesn't mean that connection doesn't exist. So in permaculture, part of becoming a skilled gardener is relearning the language of plants, of the soil ecology, of the insects, of reacquainting ourselves with the reality that we are connected to nature, that we are not disconnected. So when we, in our popular culture, think about our nature deficit and our disconnection from nature, that message that gets promoted, I think, does so because we see people as a negative force. We see people having lost their connection with nature, and so they become a negative force against nature. So why does our popular culture like to frame us as being disconnected and separate from nature? I think there's two ways this message is preached to us most of our lives. And the first one is that kind of manifest destiny. Humanity needs to subdue nature and the wild and bring it into our sphere of control. And that's a very popular Western kind of European cultural mindset. That nature needs to be subdued. And that we exist in a hierarchy above nature, outside of it. And it's our job to take charge of it and get it to submit to our will. The other way that we are told we are separate from nature comes from the other end of the spectrum, which is that we are inherently a harming, damaging force, and that nature would be better off if we left it alone. So we set up wildlife preserves and we set aside swaths of land that are entirely wild. And we communicate the message, these places are better if they are left completely separate from humans. That nature does better without the interference of mankind, of humanity. And in permaculture, it's a message that I see becoming really pervasive. And I don't think it's in keeping with the original ethos of permaculture. It's a message that we would be better if humankind died out, that people are a scourge, that people are only capable of harming. And if we got out of the way, the planet would be better. And like I said, I don't think that's in keeping with the message of permaculture, which is that we are not disconnected from nature. We are not separate from nature. We are part of nature. And so when you operate with a framework and a worldview of everything is a resource, we just need to find out how to utilize it, which is something that I think is probably the driving factor for me and how I address problems in the garden. They aren't problems. They are resources, and I need to find solutions. I need to be solution-minded, not problem-minded. So if something seems like an inconvenience or a negative force, how do I turn around and promote it being a positive force? Let me move up here out of the rain garden a little bit. And I think it is that way with humanity. We have been told that we are separate from nature, and that either it is our job to subdue it, or it is our job to go away. And like I said, we don't exist apart from nature, and nature is not better off without us. And I think that's what permaculture teaches us, is that we as human beings can have a positive effect on our environment, particularly when it comes to remediating, regenerating, renewing landscapes that our predecessors, in their manifest destiny, subdue and control mindset, have damaged. Just because our predecessors had that way of looking at nature, that doesn't mean it is the right way or the only way humans can interact with the environment. So I would ask you, do you see humans as a resource? Are you solution-minded? Are you looking for ways to harness our ingenuity, our power of observation, our skills, our ability to take what Mother Nature does and speed up the process of renewing and regenerating? Do you have that framework when you approach gardening and permaculture and ecological regeneration? Because I think if we take on that reality and we accept that reality, we start to see ourselves as part of a solution, and we start to listen and want to partner with what is happening in nature. That we want to be part of fixing the problem. That we see ourselves not as stewards of the landscape, but as part of the landscape with our role to play, along with the plants and the fungi and the soil and the pollinators, and along with livestock and along with the wild animals. We see ourselves as having a role to play in promoting the diversity of the ecosystem and being a force for good. So I'd just encourage you to take on that mindset, because it's in keeping with what permaculture is about, and you'll see ways in which you can be a benefit, ways in which you can be a force for good instead of something that needs to be gotten rid of. Because as we've talked about in permaculture, it's produce no waste. Nothing is a waste. It's just a resource for which we need to find a use. And humanity is that way. We are a resource. Let's use ourselves that way. And in doing so, we find that we are able to connect more and more. And that is a fulfilling and regenerative way to live, to be of use and to be connected with our planet and more connected with each other, connected with the living things around us. So if you have thoughts on that, please feel free and share them in the comments. I will be back tomorrow with more on permaculture concepts. And I hope you enjoy your day. Thanks.